With Black Ops 7 fresh in players' hands, the matchmaking still manages to be the hottest topic in the community. So today I want to take a closer look. My name is Mario and let's talk about classic or open matchmaking versus skill-based matchmaking, SBMM. Now before people get the wrong idea, I don't think you'll find anyone who hates SBMM more than me, so I'm definitely not here to defend it in any way, shape or form. Skill-based matchmaking. But while I'm not going to do an in-depth statistical analysis because I'm probably not smart enough for that, I do think there's a conversation to be had. I want to talk about the history, the differences and how they work, as well as pros and cons, and why certain discussions keep happening. As always, you can find the timestamps in the description. After all, we had the classic matchmaking like forever, and there must have been a reason for why SBMM got introduced with MW 2019. Had to do it, sorry about that Activision, but like I said, there's a conversation to be had because the situation might not be as black and white as we think. But still, SBMM. When talking about classic matchmaking, what does that mean exactly? We're calling it the classic system number 1 because it's been in Call of Duty pretty much forever up until MW 2019. It's basically random matchmaking and ping is king. That phrase got thrown around way too much during the SBMM days, even though it was obviously BS, but the classic system is gonna try to get you into the game with the best connection for you. The people you get matched up with or matched up against are basically random, but there's a reason why I'm calling it basically random and maybe not fully random. Their official wording is matchmaking where skill is minimally considered. And I've seen a lot of people being all pissed off saying something along the lines of, "How can they call it classic matchmaking if skill is still being considered? This is BS." Relax, let's take a breath, and let's talk about this. There might be some Black Ops 7 specific problems when it comes to skill being minimally considered, and we'll talk about those later. What some people don't know is that skill has always been minimally considered, even back in the good old glory days of COD, but it's just not quite what it sounds like. You'll have people with a very low skill rating on paper, they might be new to the game, the circumstances honestly don't even matter all that much, and they 1000% should get the chance to play the game, but it's only right for them to play it in a protected bracket. And to make that clear, that doesn't mean you won't get the chance to play against weaker players, it doesn't mean that you won't get to shit on people, this is about the absolute lowest skill bracket, and that would just be unnecessary. If you want to get matched up against that kind of bracket, I'm sorry, but you're a f***ing idiot. So that's why in theory they're calling it classic matchmaking with skill minimally considered. You need these protected brackets, and if they said that skill isn't considered at all, they'd just be lying to us. Besides that, classic or open matchmaking is pretty much random. There is some team balancing going on once the lobby is filled up though. Moving on to the other side, the dark side if you will, skill-based matchmaking. And this is where I have the first issue with it already. Looking at SBMM in video games in general, it will try to match you up against people around your skill level, while also trying to deliver a good connection. While ping maybe isn't the #1 priority in comparison to open matchmaking, it obviously is still very important, because SBMM systems would have no chance of succeeding if it was going to put you in 300 ping lobbies just for the sake of matching up your skill level. And SBMM absolutely can be a fair and viable system, depending on the game and the situation. Take any game as an example, not necessarily Call of Duty. If there's a ranked mode, then there has to be some consideration of skill. Or if a game simply isn't casual at all and maybe is all about skill or ranking, then yeah, you need SBMM. The point of that should be for everyone to show off their rank with the goal to get better. When we take a look at COD, however, we realize that doesn't quite match up. Except for the actual ranked play, you don't see a rank or a skill level or anything like that. In fact, the SBMM in COD isn't even proper skill-based matchmaking, it's rather EOMM, engagement optimized matchmaking. So what's the difference? EOMM isn't a pure skill-based system. It's much more like an algorithm that's designed to keep players on the game for as long as possible, because statistically the longer people keep playing, the more likely it is for them to spend extra money on the game in the form of microtransactions, for example. That's why every couple games the Call of Duty system is gonna throw you a bone and put you into an easier game to keep you playing. With that one easy game after a bunch of sweaty ones, you're much more likely to say,
"No, I'll play one more, I bet."
Alright, bet.
If it was only strictly about skill, those random really easy games probably wouldn't happen. To keep things simple, I'm gonna stick with the word SBMM instead of EOMM, but you get the picture. So if up until Black Ops 4 we had the classic open matchmaking, why did they make the switch to SBMM in MW 2019? I know I've used that joke before, but here we go again. At the end of the day, I think that's what it comes down to, but let me rephrase the whole thing a little bit. I understand that they're running a business, and businesses for the most part have the goal to make money. I get that, I really do. We talked about protected brackets before, and this SBMM was supposed to extend those brackets. There are a lot of people playing COD who don't take this as seriously as me or you, and they'll just jump on for a few games a week whenever they have time, and that's great. And their goal with SBMM was to hopefully keep the casuals away from the sweats, cause the sweats are just gonna bully them and kick their f***ing ass, and that will get the casuals to quit, at least in their opinion. Ideally, under this system, everyone should be as close to a 1KD as possible. There probably are a lot of very smart people working on the matchmaking, the algorithms, and the stats, so I'm sure they know what they're doing. I've actually read online that apparently it was Infinity Ward who pitched the idea for the SBMM system to Activision, but I really don't know if that's true, so take that with a very big grain of salt. To them, it's clearly a success. On the community side, however, there have been massive complaints about this for years. While it's easy for the online community to be kind of a vocal minority, because a lot of people just play the game without posting about it on the internet, these weren't just normal complaints at this point, this is game breaking to a lot of people, including me. I'm gonna talk more about general pros and cons later on. For the longest time they didn't even talk about the matchmaking, acting like it didn't even exist, even though it was painfully obvious. You can imagine that's just gonna piss off people even more when it's clear as day that something is there, you can feel it. YouTubers and streamers have taken time to even test it, so it was proven too, but the guys in charge don't say anything. I mean, that's gonna trigger some folks, and rightfully so. But in 2024, they released this big white paper on their system, showing us some data on why this system makes so much sense for player retention, and therefore they don't plan on changing anything essentially. So if it wasn't obvious before, it was pretty clear at this point that complaining to a big corporation about something really isn't gonna help at all, and it's honestly kind of unfair, because at this point the matchmaking is 100% on Activision, the publisher, but it's mostly the developers who communicate with the players. Now the devs are getting all this flack for the matchmaking, even though it's not their fault at all. At least in the case of Treyarch and Sledgehammer, there's a good chance that they're actually on the community side here. Now let's fast forward to October of 2025 during the BO7 beta, with SBMM complaints all over the place again, when Treyarch dropped a bombshell. They announced the Open Mosh Pit, a new playlist with classic matchmaking where skill is minimally considered. And after 6 years of suffering and complaining, the community rejoiced. By the way, what I don't see players talking about enough is how much Treyarch must have stuck their neck out for us, because at this point it's clear that the community sentiment doesn't matter all that much. So I think it was a perfect storm of Battlefield 6 being pretty successful, and the devs also doing a fantastic job of convincing the people in charge. And playing this new Open Mosh Pit was a night and day difference. It was actually incredible, and due to the overwhelmingly positive feedback, it got announced later on that the classic open matchmaking would be the default for Black Ops 7. But that led to some rather unique issues. What it comes down to is that trust is absolutely in the f***ing gutter, which is not surprising after the last 6 years, and the community is very much on edge, in fear of a quote-unquote rug pull. I mean, yeah, it took 6 years to get the classic matchmaking back, and we're worried about it getting taken away again. A few days before launch, they announced that in addition to the default open playlist, there would also be an SBMM playlist, and people kinda lost their minds a little bit, including me. In a nutshell, it wouldn't even be a big deal. They never said that there were going to be no SBMM playlists, only that open was the default, which ended up being true, and everyone can just play what they like, but like I said, people are worried about this being taken away. And even now with BO7 out, the discussions and the discourse just keep going. Now we've got players who are convinced that matchmaking was tweaked following the beta, or that SBMM is in fact in every playlist, and there is no open matchmaking at all. As far as official statements go, Treyarch have confirmed again and reassured that the open playlists are working as intended with minimal skill consideration. I'll just leave it at that, because that's honestly an endless cycle or an endless back and forth at this point, and there's no way for me to tell you what's true or not. We also don't know what their interpretation of minimal skill consideration is right now, but I find it hard to believe that lobbies with classic matchmaking are this f***ing sweaty. And all that sort of leaves the question of what matchmaking system is better, or is there even a system that's best? Which brings me to the pros and cons, starting with classic or open matchmaking. The biggest thing here is that you'll have the best connection possible. The times you'll spend searching for a game are gonna be pretty short. It's also gonna give you the most authentic experience you could have. There's no crazy algorithm working in the background, and it'll be a balanced experience. You'll have games where you're kicking ass, then there will be games where you're getting your ass kicked, and other ones are just kind of so-so somewhere in the middle, but everybody's got a fair chance at playing and getting better at the game. On the other hand, the biggest downside is of course that there's no protection for you. You might only have limited amounts of free time to play the game, and when you do, you want to chill, play and have a good time, and not get stomped by some cracked out kid who's on the game 24/7. And that's also the biggest advantage of skill-based matchmaking. You're kind of protected from players who are a lot better than you, so in theory, players who are average or slightly below average should benefit the most from that. And that's just about the only positive I can find about SBMM. The problems with SBMM though are rather significant in my opinion. The biggest thing is that it's simply 100% a curated experience. There's nothing authentic about it, you're basically having the experience that they want you to have. It's almost like a false sense of security or reality, with the game making it seem like you're better than you really are, cause you're protected. The quality of the games can't really shine either. There's no personality no matter how good or bad the game is. The SBMM is just gonna mess with it anyway. You don't really know where you stand either. There is a skill level for you in-game and it's an important criteria for matchmaking, but you don't get to see your skill level. That completely defeats the purpose of any SBMM, and the better you get at the game, the SBMM is also gonna get cranked up. So you're just getting punished for spending time on a game and improving, cause eventually every lobby is gonna feel like a tournament final that will have you sweating and fighting for your life. We talked about average players wanting to chill and not get stomped. Well, maybe everybody does. You think it's fun for the better players to come out of most matches completely exhausted after having to sweat their asses off only using the best weapons because they kind of have to as a result of the matchmaking? That's f***ing ridiculous. Everybody should be able to relax and have fun on a game. Whenever you party up with friends, SBMM isn't exactly ideal either. If I'm playing with friends who aren't as good as me, the game is gonna try to balance that, so I end up getting easier lobbies and my friends whom the game might usually want to protect are sweating their asses off now. Connection is almost always gonna be worse as well in SBMM lobbies. So what's the best solution for everybody now, and what should Call of Duty be doing going forward? I was honestly expecting to be talking mean shit about SBMM for like 15 minutes straight, and that's it. But I understand it a little bit at least. Personally, I think classic open matchmaking has forever been and still is the best system COD could have. There was never anything wrong with it and I don't think it should have ever been changed. At one point in our lives, we all were terrible at the game, but the more you play, you get better and there's no need to be protecting that many people through matchmaking. You don't need to grab everyone by their hand. With that said, and especially looking at Black Ops 7 now, if for whatever reason we need to have SBMM in COD, even though I still think it can go and rot in hell, that's the way to do it by presenting both options. Don't make it complicated, just play with open cards, explain to people the differences between the matchmaking types, and let people choose however they want to play. And for the love of the Call of Duty gods, let open classic matchmaking be like it's always been, don't mess with that shit. If we ever go back to only having SBMM after getting a taste of what it's like with the classic system, I see a shitstorm of enormous proportions on the horizon, with more and more players no longer playing COD for fun. I just did a lot of talking, so now it's up to you guys. Let me know in the comments, what do you think about the matchmaking situation in COD? What would your ideal solution be? I think it's a very interesting topic and I can't wait to talk to you about it. If this was in any way entertaining, interesting, useful, or whatever else to you, please like, comment, and subscribe. You can find me on X, TikTok, or Instagram at LevelUpMario. Thank you so much for watching, take care, stay safe, and I'll see you soon.